author, columnist, managing editor of LibertyNation.com, podcast host and conservative policy advocate.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Hello and welcome to Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio American Network from our flagship station in the nation's capital, WWRC in Washington, D.C. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. On today's show, we have our special guest talking Trump, Biden, Doge, Con Air, Ukraine, and everything in between. It's going to be quite the show. Please remember, this show is proudly sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access podcasts, breaking news analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. And welcome to Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio American Network. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. Very fortunate to have with us today Liberty Nation's chief political correspondent, Graham J. Noble, to talk the overview of what's happening in the political world in the United States today. Graham, thanks for being here.
Pleasure, Mark.
So, Graham, it seems that we've had a couple of weeks of threatened investigations, potential charges. We've had ups and downs. We've had roundabouts. And pretty much we've had trade wars. We've had electricity emergencies. It's been a hectic couple of weeks. What's the calm view going forward, Graham?
Well, that's a good question, Mark. I'm not even sure if there is a calm view going forward.
Well, that's a good answer.
Yeah. I mean, I just think that it surprises me a little bit. I think it surprises a lot of people that the Democrats, after the kind of drubbing they took in the 2024 election, that they would maybe have, kind of calmed down a little bit, taken a step back, maybe chill out a bit, maybe rethink the orange man bad strategy. But they obviously have actually doubled down on the whole thing. And I would say that even if you compare this to Trump's first term, that the Democrats are actually more hysterically anti-Trump than they were back then.
Well, you know why, Graham, don't you? It's because if we're to believe them at their words, that there'll never be another election. I mean, that's what we were told, right? All the way up until November. There'll never be another election. If he wins this, that's it. There's no more elections. So that's probably why they're so upset nowadays, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, well, the thing is, I mean, whether, obviously there is going to be another,
of course,
presidential election in 2028, but they are, killing their own chances of actually winning that one. I mean, right now, obviously the next focus for both parties is going to be the midterms.
Yeah.
And that's kind of interesting because even though the Democratic Party seems to be flailing, it's not necessarily a given that they are going to crash and burn in the midterms. They could still pull something out there. But in terms of, getting somebody into the White House in 2028, they are just going about it, just to put it mildly, they're going about it all the wrong way.
Yeah, that's a very interesting distinction. So you've got you've got the three branches, of course. Judiciary is, there's five solid conservatives. There's Chief Justice John Roberts and three more liberal members. That one's pretty much in the bag for the conservative side. There's the presidency, which is secure till at least 2028. And we will come back to who could be a presidential frontrunner for the Democratic Party there. But in terms of the Congress, that's really a coin flip, isn't it? Because you've got the Democrats need to flip a couple of House seats, which is going to be very, very easy to do. And historically, seats tend to switch during a midterm. And then, of course, as you point out, the Senate, currently 47 Democrat to 53 Republican. But this last election cycle, the Senate elections in 2024, the GOP had an inbuilt advantage based on the number of seats that they were defending compared to the Democrats. And that is directly flipped come 2026, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah, I mean, and that's usually the way it goes. And then this time around, the Republicans are going to be defending more seats than the Democrats. Um, I, my personal view is that the Republicans, I think, stand a fairly good chance of holding on to their Senate majority. Not necessarily from a Republican's perspective, anyway. I would use the word optimistic, not necessarily that confident that they can hold on to the House. And of course, right now, it's actually the Republicans. The control of the House is theirs to lose. Because they've got until the 2026 midterms to get some stuff done, and if they're just kind of flailing around and not achieving anything, well, then they're going to throw away that majority. So it really is kind of theirs to lose, no matter what the Democrats do. It's just the Republicans are, I would say, kind of masters of their own destiny in terms of the House.
Or masters of their own destruction, if that's the way they choose to go with it.
Yeah.
So let's talk leadership. Donald Trump is very firmly putting his stamp on the Republican Party. It's a MAGA party now. That's the reality of it. It's just a MAGA. It's a MAGA party. But the Democrats, they're failing to launch anybody into a significant guiding light role within the party. And although there are rumblings that Kamala Harris might rise phoenix-like from the ashes of her November defeat to once again probably fail, but to come back and lead the party again, I think that's an unlikely scenario. But why are we not seeing anybody put their heads above the parapet? Is it too early, perhaps, or is it because there isn't a unifying message?
I think I'm not sure if it's ever too early to start. For these people in Washington and people who have presidential aspirations, I guess it's never too early to start campaigning. Kind of softly, under the radar, if you will. I mean, I think there's no doubt that Gavin Newsom has already begun that process.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think the very idea of Kamala Harris making a comeback is ridiculous. And actually, I personally believe that a lot of the power players within the Democratic Party won't actually allow her to do that. Because after 2020, here's the thing about 2024. Democrats like to say, and kind of left-leaning pundits on television like to say that, well, Trump's victory, he only won by a whisker. It was a razor-thin margin he won by. And Kamala Harris, they'd love to use the term flawless campaign. She ran a flawless campaign. Yeah. The truth is, behind the scenes, everybody knows that the campaign was a complete disaster.
Yeah.
And in fact, Lindy Lee, who is a former Democratic Party bundler, who was extremely upset the way things turned out, because she was given assurances by Kamala Harris's campaign that it was a slam dunk, that victory was not even up for question, kind of thing. And so she raised a lot of money for the Harris campaign and for the DNC. And of course, it was all for nothing. And now she has since revealed, and it's a bit strange that she didn't know this beforehand, but maybe they just weren't telling her. But now she's revealed that actually Kamala Harris is at Joe Biden's internal campaign polls before he was, I'm not going to say dropped out, before he was pushed out. His internal polling was showing that he had no chance of beating Donald Trump. Yep. And then Kamala Harris's internal campaign polling was also saying the same thing. So they were putting a brave face on it, her and Tim Walz, dancing about the place and acting in a very cringeworthy fashion. But behind the scenes, they knew they weren't going to win.
Yeah, and I my guess is, and I'm sure this is where you're going with this, is that the donors who were so keen and so happy to spend their hard-earned cash on a political candidate, now that they know they've been lied to by the people in operation, that no polling ever really had these guys ahead, they'll be very, very reluctant to put that same outlay next time around. We're going to be back with Graham J. Noble after this short break. Don't go anywhere.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And we're back on Liberty Nation Radio. I remain your host, Mark Angelides, and we continue to be joined by Liberty Nation's chief political correspondent, Graham J. Noble. Now, we're continuing our conversation on what's taking place within the Beltway at the moment. We were just talking about how Lindy Lear, former Democrat bundler, how she discovered that the polling really wasn't there for Joe Biden or Kamala Harris in the run-up to the November election. But what I want to check out, Graham, is I want your thoughts on the faces have changed, but the system's still in operation, right? The people who are essentially the workers behind the scenes of the Democratic Party, they're still in place. It's just the faces at the top that are changing, isn't it?
Right, and it seems to be that seems to be the case, and it's kind of funny. There's an interesting parallel, I think, here with the federal government writ large, where you've got this situation where the deep state, the administrative state, the bureaucratic state, whatever you want to call it, it's mostly kind of left wing people, in some cases fairly extreme kind of progressives. They are buried into the administrative state, and therefore to make real, to make a real definite change in the way the federal government operates is difficult, because you've got all these people buried inside it, and they're still pursuing the same kind of agendas. And within the Democratic Party, it's the same thing now. You've basically got the party's been very much kind of overtaken by, I almost want to use the word infested, by hardcore progressives, and they are still pursuing their kind of crazy ideological ideas, and that's the thing. How do you turn that ship around? It would take, to me, for the Democratic Party to save itself, they've got to stumble upon some extremely strong-willed figure.
An almost Trumpian figure, one might.
And indeed, they need their own version of Trump, really, to come in and say, no, we're not going down this road anymore, because this path just leads to destruction in the political wilderness. We got to turn it all around. But, who have they got like that? It's almost as if Gavin Newsom is trying to set himself up as that, where he recently came out and said, well, I think it's unfair for men to compete in women's sports, which of course is anathema nowadays to the modern Democratic Party.
Sure.
But he almost looks like he's trying to set himself up. But I don't really believe he's that character. I believe that he's still as far left as he always was.
Yeah, well, to me it seems, and obviously I don't know the man personally, Governor Gavin Newsom, but it seems to me that he's very much a politically expedient politician. If this is the thing that will best serve his political agenda, ambitions, aims, then that's the bandwagon that he'll join with, which is why he so easily flipped on that position about trans women, trans sports thing. I don't even know how to talk about it without sounding like an idiot. But yeah, he brought out his podcast, didn't he? So he's launched his own podcast, which is not a new thing. Remember, Ted Cruz did his own podcast as well. I don't know if that's still going, but I did enjoy the first few episodes of that. But he did something very interesting, which was to bring on Charlie Kirk, who's the Turning Point USA founder, a very, very sharp mind, and very entertaining to watch as well, to have a more of a combative interview. And so I was watching the numbers on this over the days, and I'm sure you find this interesting, Graham, is that after 16 to 17 hours, there were about 25,000 YouTube views on Gavin Newsom's This Is Gavin Newsom videocast. After 14 hours, because it seems to me that Charlie Kirk, he left that studio, went and recorded a 12-minute bit about, I've just done this thing with Gavin Newsom. That had almost 500,000 views in the same time period. So it seems to me that and this was my summation, I might have this wrong, I'd like your opinion, that the people who watched it on Gavin Newsom's thing are people who are interested in seeing Charlie Kirk debate or speak to Gavin Newsom because they knew what Charlie Kirk was capable of. And the people who would normally support Gavin Newsom didn't want to watch it because they believe that that he was platforming somebody who they consider far right. What's your take?
Yeah, no, I agree. Generally speaking, with that, Mark, I would say that in my view, the people who support Gavin Newsom but chose not to watch that podcast, or that at least even that segment of the podcast, I think, maybe some of them are like, well, you're giving a platform to Charlie Kirk, who's just another, right-wing fascist, blah, 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 blah. But yeah, so I think a lot of the people who are Gavin Newsom supporters but didn't want to watch Charlie Kirk, they simply didn't want to watch it because they don't want to hear what Charlie Kirk's got to say. They don't want to expose themselves to those points of view. They just find it incredibly uncomfortable to listen to any conservative pundit, putting forth those kind of views.
So I wonder if Gavin Newsom, for all of his California gubernatorial fame, and of course, national fame as well, he was very supportive of Joe Biden up until he wasn't. And then, of course, Kamala Harris, and he didn't enter the race wisely. He didn't enter the race against, not that they were offering him a position, because, of course, no primaries needed when you've got Kamala Harris at the helm, right? But he very wisely played his cards close to his chest. But I don't think that there's enough appeal for a Californication of the United States to get him to the White House. I don't think there's that much. I don't think there's enough. I think you're coasting around Kamala Harris style things, especially with the swing states, because the swing states don't want wildly progressive. That's why they went for Trump in this most recent election. And Gavin Newsom, from California, same as Kamala Harris, California politics, that's offering voters the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And, you've got the whole basically the whole interior of the country, with the exception of a few scattered cities and a few scattered counties. The entire interior of the country is red, it's Republican red. And they're not going to go for, a California Democrat. And the thing is, I believe that I'm not sure Gavin Newsom would even be that popular in the north, in the blue northeast, in New York and places like this. I don't think they particularly want sure, they want a Democrat, but they don't want a California Democrat.
That's a very, very interesting point. It's theater people versus movie people, right? It's Broadway versus Hollywood. Gavin Newsom's very Hollywood. Graham J. Noble, thank you ever so much for being with us today. I really appreciate your time and your wit and your wisdom. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, Mark. Thanks. Bye.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And welcome back to Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio American Network. I remain your host, Mark Angelides. Very fortunate to have with us this week Liberty Nation's national security correspondent, Mr. Pentagon himself, Dave Patterson. Dave, thanks for being with us.
Great to be with you, Mark.
So, Dave, you wrote a fantastic article this last weekend about military transports for deporting illegal migrant criminals. And so I read it, and then I had to go and watch Con Air. Because it's a fantastic movie. It's got a bit of everything in it. It's a true hero story, but also because I felt it was quite pertinent to what you were writing about. Could you give us the background on this, please?
On Con Air with
No, we can talk about Con. I'm happy to.
With Cage.
More people might enjoy it.
Well, it was obviously they want to get rid of these criminals. They want to these illegal aliens who also have significant criminal records and are many of them very violent. and as we're seeing in the in the press about the murders and so forth. So what are you going to do? I mean, are you going to put these people in, first class, business class? I guess there is no first class anymore much, and put them in business class and, run the risk of having them get very irritated when they can't have the fourth free drink. No, you're gonna put them in shackles, and you're gonna put them in a military airplane, so you have complete control and safety, not only for the crews but for the people being deported. And now one would argue, of course, it's more expensive. Naturally, it's more expensive because you have military airplanes that have a much higher operational cost. And however, you have to, weigh the cost benefit. I mean, you have complete control and safety. And so I think that was the thinking behind using C-17s and C-130s.
Yeah, so you wrote in your article that it's about using the C-17s. It's about $3,900 per person, and then, but then on a commercial thing that would cost about $1,200. So there is a price increase there. But you're right about the safety aspect, because these are, as you rightly point out, these are not just criminals for crossing the border illegally. This isn't somebody's, second cousin, twice removed, third friend's roommate who just, happened to cross the border because they thought, well, schools here are a bit better for the kids that they're hoping to have in the future. These are people who have committed criminal acts after entering the country, many of them violent, many of them connected to gangs. And just imagine what a mess that would be if a few of them got together and decided, you know what, let's not go back. Let's do something with this plane. That could be a disaster on the magnitude of 9/11, theoretically.
No, that's absolutely right. And we have experience with that. Corey Smith wrote a very, very good article for Liberty Nation News, in which he had an account of Haitians who were sent back to Haiti, and halfway through the flight, they found out that they were going back to Haiti instead of wherever they thought they were going, and they trashed the airplane. They just literally ripped it to pieces, and it was basically a riot in the back. And it was not just frightening but dangerous for the air crews. And so you don't want to have that happen. And consequently, there are some nuances here to using military airplanes. The military flies what are called locals, flagpole flights, in order to get currency and keep their pilots proficient, and it's local training. Well, these flights that also provide an international aspect to the flight. It's basically you're fulfilling a useful purpose. Not only that, but you're getting training. In some cases, you get training in air refueling if you have longer flights, like one recently to India. So you're kind of getting a twofer. You're doing a useful job for Homeland Defense, and you're getting training at the same time. Of course, all flying is training in one form or fashion. Some is more extensive than others, but nonetheless, it is it like I say, you get it's fulfill a good purpose, and you get useful training. And so it's not all downside here in terms of the cost of the airplane.
Yeah, I mean, the people involved would have to have training at some point, so may as well lump it in and save a bit of cash on the way. And it's not as though, I don't think everybody really understands what like a C-17 is, for example. It's basically, just for those not know, it's a cargo plane with a big open middle area and then wall seats along the side that you kind of strap into. And it's not the most comfortable flight. I mean, I've taken several of them myself. I'm sure, Dave, you've taken scores of those. But it's not supposed to be a luxury flight home, right? That's not the idea
got it.
behind it.
And you also have the capacity not only to have people along the sides, but they have mid-row stanchions that go down the middle with seats on either side, and it can carry 102 fully kitted out, as you would say, paratroopers, and designed to carry an M1A1 tank. Goes
or plenty of jeeps down the middle. So everybody tries and steals the best place to sleep. Yeah,
right. and it's quite a remarkable airplane. Actually, it's air refuelable and goes without air refueling. Goes 2,400 miles, carrying 172,000 pounds. That's what Boeing says here. Yes, and it can land in 3,000 feet on improved runways. I mean, what's not to like about that? And so it's a very versatile airplane, and but it does cost money. Not as much as a C-5, for example, but it does. I would question the number the media is using, which is 28,500 flight hour. I don't know where that came from, other than the media asked somebody, and it must be because the actual reimbursable cost is what U.S. Transcom, who through Air Mobility Command operates these airplanes, their reimbursable cost for non-government, even that's the highest for non-government clients and customers, is about 16,404. So it's significantly different. So I don't know who the Department of Homeland Security is talking to, but they might want to go directly to the provider.
Yeah, there's on the cost and benefits analysis here, and I know it's a little bit in the weeds, but it's quite clear you don't want a civilian charter flight dealing with this, because it's dangerous. The risk is far too high, not just of crashing the plane, but the risk to hostage taking, the air crew, things like that, and of course the damage to the plane, as pointed out by the recent Haiti flight. But I mean, there's another option if people don't want the actual military involved. Now, there was a recent poll on this, by the way, and it was, I believe it was CBS YouGov. I might be wrong on that, but I think it was CBS YouGov, and it said 30% of Americans don't think that the U.S. military should be involved in the deportation of illegal immigrants. Now, that's not to say that it's not widely supported. In fact, it's over 80% support for deporting those who have illegal immigrants who have committed violent crimes in the U.S. So it's over 80% support, but they don't support. That's 30% don't support using the military for this. So there is an alternative, but it's just not a very cost-effective one. Is you get C-17 type planes or C-130 type planes under civilian ownership, and then have essentially mercenaries stock them. And I don't think anybody wants to see that, because A, the cost is going to be ridiculously high for something like that. And B, you don't have as much operational control from a governmental point of view, which is what you really want on these things. You want the people safely in their seats as soon as they leave, as soon as they get on those planes. And then once they've disembarked, only then are they out of charge. And I don't think that's ever going to happen with like a soldier of fortune outfit.
And no, and as you can see, I mean, these folks, when they go on the airplane, I mean, they're shackled, and as they should be, and so I mean, they're criminals. This is not a luxury flight, and nor was it intended to be, and so. But I think, the vast majority of these folks, the initial really bad actors, have been dealt with. And I think we're up to probably well over 6,000 of them now having been deported. And it may be more reasonable to, now that you're deporting others who don't have criminal records, but are I'd say don't have criminal records. Yeah, they do have criminal records. They broke the law coming into the United States. So, ergo, you're a criminal and you have a criminal record. But the ones who are not particularly violent. Although we do have this problem of all the getaways and all the people that under the Biden administration they failed to sequester and they failed to take charge of, and they're out in the cities and neighborhoods, and who knows where they are and what they're doing. So we do have that problem.
Indeed. Well, we'll be back with Dave Patterson after this short break. But as far as the deportations go, if I may, I think it's too late to put the deportation bunny back in the box, Dave. We'll be back in a moment.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And we're back on Liberty Nation Radio. I continue to be Mark Angelides, and we continue to be joined by Liberty Nation's national security correspondent, Dave Patterson. Dave, thanks. We talked about the Con Air migrant deportation flights, which I love, and I promise I won't quote any more from that movie unless I think of a good one. But now I'd like to talk very, very briefly for me. There's an issue that you brought to my attention, is that it seems that Europe and the world and the media and the European media and the world media and all permutations of those several words, they're just not listening to what people high up in the Trump administration are saying regarding Ukraine.
No, that's right. I firmly believe that they look at these opportunities for Secretary of State Rubio, Secretary of Defense Hegseth, when they come out and they talk about the Trump national security doctrine, if you will, and they think it's boilerplate for the moment. No, it's not. This is what is going on inside the United States. Secretary Hegseth made this very clear at a stakeout when he went to the Ukraine Defense Contact Group, and also when he was in the NATO meetings recently. He said that the priorities of the United States are very clear. We are going to secure our southern border first. We are going to take care of our major threat, which is China. And then we're going to be a good neighbor to Europe and do what we can to support Europe. We are not supporting Europe.
Yeah.
And I think that was very clear. But I don't think anybody got it, because the way in which they're talking, it's, oh my gosh, the United States is pulling away. Nobody said that. Not one person has said that. But what we have said is that we have bigger fish to fry, and
Secretary of State Rubio, he said something similar, didn't he?
Yes, absolutely. And everybody was upset with the United States because we didn't include Zelensky in the first, or Zelensky's representative in the first meetings with the Russians. But what would that have what would happen there? It was a building trust meeting. It was a, as they say, confidence building. And with the Ukrainians there, they would have said, here are our demands. We're not. It would be about internal national security, sovereignty, security, and the whole thing would have devolved. And so it was not a good idea to have them there, and that's why I don't think they were.
I think something people really gloss over is, with this in particular, why Ukraine's representatives weren't there. If President Zelensky can't stop, as VP J.D. Vance said, can't stop litigating the case, even when he's in the Oval Office to sign a deal with the United States, what chance was there of him not litigating the situation in the room with the Russians when you're just trying to get the basic things? Are we ready to start talking? What are the preconditions before we start negotiating?
Yeah,
and if he can't hold off on the litigation in a friendly environment, what hope was there with that? But
yeah, and the whole idea of security assurances, security guarantees. Well, there's a newsflash: there aren't any. I mean, no matter how powerful you are, there are no security guarantees. And so to keep bringing that up was not helpful. It wasn't productive. So I think that the point that Rubio made in the meetings that he had in Saudi Arabia was that we're not going to be sitting down with a map and drawing lines, because first of all, it's far too soon for that, but it's not productive. It's not helpful for the discussion. And that's not where Ukraine is. They want to sit down and draw lines. This is our line. We won't give up any more than this. Well, the discussions and the negotiations aren't even negotiations yet. Why would you poison the well by doing that?
I think what you say about lines is very interesting, because the conversation has shifted in the last couple of weeks, and it strikes me as a very unrealistic thing. But rather than just, okay, we get back the Donbass region, right, Donetsk, Luhansk, and that was where it was. But now people are talking, it's got to go back to, where it was in 2014. And I wonder why these same voices who are now demanding pre-2014 territorial lines, what kept them silent? What kept them, let's call it what they would call it. What kept them complicit in Russia's hegemony over Crimea for the last decade? And now they've decided that, well, we need to do something about it. This was outrageous. They kept silent for the last 10 years on it. But it strikes me as quite hypocritical.
Well, I mean, you had the Obama administration when the whole thing started, and in April 2014, and they were simply not intellectually and willfully not equipped to deal with Russia. They were not foreign policy wogs. They were simply inept in terms of dealing with other countries, and this caught them by surprise. No surprise. But when that happened, when the Donbass, Luhansk Oblasts were lost, when Crimea was annexed, the deal was over.
Yeah.
It was in cement. That was never going to come back because, as you'll recall, Obama refused to send any sort of offensive weapons to Ukraine, and it was only Donald Trump that sent them javelins. And then you come to Biden, and he's worse, because what does he do? He goes and has his big summit with Putin, after which he stops all offensive weapons to Ukraine. Now, and of course, this was on top of his excellent effort in Afghanistan. So what does Putin think? He says, we've got a chump here. And the only reason he said that is because it was true.
Yeah.
And consequently, what the Biden administration has managed to leave us with is an extraordinarily complex, convoluted set of equities, and everybody wants a piece, and it's going to take adults to sort all this out.
Yeah, it seems that there's a great deal more noise than action taking place at the moment. It's almost as though the fourth estate is reveling in the world chaos because it sells more papers, unfortunately. Dave Patterson, thanks ever so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Mark. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
And a very special thank you to you at home for tuning in to listen to Liberty Nation Radio today. Thanks for being here. Please remember, Liberty Nation does not endorse candidates, campaigns, nor legislation, and this presentation is no endorsement. Thanks for being here.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.